Hi guys, welcome to the latest podcast of YarninBlak. Today I've got a great friend of mine on, Kerrie. I'll introduce you to Aunty Kerrie in a moment. But first I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I'm currently calling in from. I'm here in Baldwin Q on the land of the Wurundjeri people. I'd like to pay respect to their elders past, present and emerging. But also like to acknowledge any other Aboriginal people that have joined us today, including my wonderful guest, Aunty Kerrie Doyle. Aunty Kerrie, how are you?
Oh, so good. So lovely to see you, AJ, after such a long time. Thanks for inviting me into your space.
No, thank you for joining us. I know how busy you are, but for people that don't know you, can you just tell us who you are, where you're from?
Yep. So I'm Aunty Kerrie. I'm from my mother is sorry, my son's on the phone. I'm Cadigal on my mother's side and Winninninni Budyari on my father's side, with a couple of Irish grandfathers thrown in. So I'm actually on Dharawal land at the moment, and I do love the way our mobs acknowledge country. So not only did they welcome, the traditional people can welcome people, but I like the idea of acknowledging country. So, for example, around here we have a beautiful waterfall that we should acknowledge as part of our Mother Earth. And where I come from, there was a tree that my father used to go and talk to, as though the tree was almost anthropomorphized. So I think acknowledging country for us is more than welcoming. It's rallying the cause to look after the country that we all share and work on and love.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you just explained that. Um, so I'm just going to throw some questions at you to start off with. But what's your current job right now? What does Aunty Kerrie do on a day-to-day basis?
So I wear a few hats at the moment. I'm the Professor for Indigenous Health in the School of Medicine and the Associate Dean at Western Sydney, but I'm also shared with CSU as well in the same position across there. And I'm also the academic lead for Maridulu Gumal, which is, or Sphere, which sits across the 14 research institutions in the Sydney Basin. And I manage their Indigenous bits and pieces, really.
Cool.
Yeah.
Um, so I'll go back to when did you go to school?
Went to school. I
Hmm.
hope you didn't say when.
No, where? Where?
I went to primary school in Budyari,
Yep.
Primary School. And even though, like, it was very strange now, there's even a Doyle house there now, and
Oh
there's
wow.
a Doyle Road. I know. So they've come a long way in those areas for acknowledging and looking after Indigenous people. I think that was not something that was there when I was growing up, but my father has a big mural now on the side. He's passed now. Big, beautiful mural in the side of their school up there with traditional stories and everything. Yeah, that's right. I left there when I was, I think, in year 6 clearly, but I only went to year 10 at Wyatt High School.
Yep. Now, during schooling up to year 10, was there any Aboriginal issues taught at school?
No, nothing. Everybody had to learn the traditional. Australia was discovered by Captain Cook, and the White Australia policy was still a big issue then. So
Yeah.
no, nothing, not at
So
all.
after you finished year 10, how did you get into academia? So did you study university? What did you study first?
No, I went and did nursing when I was 16, which is what a lot of us did. So they gave you a house to stay in and a uniform and fed you. And I did that for a long while, and it was and it was only when Uncle Gough came and changed the rules that any of us could afford to go to university. So I think I was about 33
Yeah.
when I did that. So I went off and studied as much as I could, and was just really fortunate. How I got into academia was, I guess, there was just a place in my head that thought we really need to be able to produce better health professionals, nursing or whatever, who can look after our mobs better. And that's really what pushed me into academia.
Yeah.
Mm.
Do you do you think that our professionals that are coming through now have a better understanding about working with Aboriginal people? Or you think we've still got a bit of way to go?
I think there's always going to be a way to go because each generation has to go through the same learning experiences, it seems to me. I think that we are doing better, but it's hard work for the people that are there. Like the average life expectancy of an Indigenous academic is 2 years because you just burn out so much with the cultural load, the 24/7 issues, the spotlighting, you have to be all things to all people. There's not enough of us to go around, and I can see that that's going to require a lot more investment by universities, and in these times it's really hard. Like universities are struggling with the money and everything. Hopefully we get a whole lot more international students that aren't going to go to America anymore, so that'll help.
Yeah, that would help. That would
Mhm.
help.
Mhm.
Yeah. Now, the word cultural safety gets thrown around a lot,
Mm.
and it's very big in APRA. What does
Mm.
cultural safety mean to you personally?
Well, see, I'm old enough to know the history of cultural safety. I'm old enough to have met Ira Harpity Ramsden, and when she was presenting at a CATSINaM conference up in Brisbane, and she developed cultural safety as when she was in a OHS conference, and she said medication safety. Why can't we have cultural safety? The issues with that are, and this is really controversial, and people will hate me, so I hope your audience doesn't, but in New Zealand, there's one language, 5 dialects, but if you speak one, you can really understand them all. That's it. There's no difference across the states, so it's easy. So there's not the big in Australia how different it is. And the other thing is, and they all disagree, is that they have the treaty. So when they advertise a position, especially in nursing, they will say one of the essential criteria is how will you demonstrate that you meet the requirements of the Treaty of Waitangi? We don't have that. So that's that. The other issue with cultural safety is the idea of safety rests on the patient, and so it's not like as Indigenous people we have all the answers, because sometimes we don't even know the questions. So I prefer the term competent or proficient. I think cultural safety is the first step on a ladder towards cultural proficiency, and that has an understanding of you and your own culture, and that hinges on the core value of cultural humility and recognizing unconscious bias and all of that sort of.
Yeah.
But it's not the end step. It's the first step on the stepping stone across the river that might get you to the other side. To be able to work with people, like, do you want someone who cannulates you to be safe or proficient? You want them to be really competent in what they do. So I think and I think the responsibility to demonstrate that needs to be on the profession and health professionals rather than asking the patient, do you feel safe? Because they're all going to say yes.
Yeah. Reconciliation is another big word that gets thrown around a lot. What does reconciliation mean to you?
Well, a lot of people say, I don't want to be reconciled with that. And, it is a bit like the Borg, isn't it? You will be assimilated. Resistance is futile. So I'm not sure that there is a term for a better term for it. I think about it a lot, and I'm not sure that there is. I know that, like at my university, we don't have reconciliation action plans. We have strategic plans, and a lot of places would have that for a reason. I do like the stretch reconciliation plans, though. I think that they've got a space. So I'm not sure that reconciling is the word that we need to consider, but I don't know what the other one is. I don't know
Yeah.
what another word is. Like my favourite word in the whole world is a Maori word, and it's kotahitanga, and it means to be about the business of creating unity in community. There's no word for that in English. I know,
I
isn't
like
it?
That's
It's
a
a lovely
beautiful
word.
word.
It's a lovely word. So they've clearly, that mob of people have clearly thought about this with a greater generosity of spirit than we did, because we don't have a word for that.
Yeah. Now, when you started nursing, taking it back that far, were you taught anything about working with Aboriginal patients?
No. no, it was such a struggle. You know, back in those days, you're hospital trained. You had to stand up when anybody more senior than you walked in. I remember though when I said, "Oh, I'm Aboriginal," and they said, "Don't tell anybody." And you think, like, it's us at Gosford Hospital, it's my community. People are going to know who you are, aren't they? Know who your family are. So it was almost like It was almost like being fair. You're just fringe dwellers of the fringe dwellers. You have to continually try and prove your identity to people who have no right to even be asking you your identity. And then if people did discover it, you had to hide it and cover it up, and etc. So, you know, those nursing dinosaurs, I hope I'm the last generation of those. I hope the next generation are kinder to people.
I agree, and I think that I do a lot of work with the nursing students at the moment, and I think that it's about 40-60%. 40% still say they struggle with colleagues understanding about their Aboriginality, and 60% go, yeah, my colleagues are actually quite understanding about it. So I still think there's still a little bit more to go, as we said before.
Okay. And it's like I can remember doing, because I still work clinically because, you know, I just can't seem to give it up. But I remember taking handover and this patient, a new admission from ED, and they said, "Oh, he's an Aboriginal lady." And somebody said, "I don't care whether they're Aboriginal or not. Why are you even telling me? I treat all my patients the same." And that's such a furphy because, yeah, because you don't, do you? Like if you treat all your abdo pains the same, you're going to be killing a few people, and it's the same thing with culture, just same.
Often in training, or when people say that to me, sometimes I come back to them and said, well, if there was a Muslim lady on the ward, would you send her the male nurse? And they go, no, of course not. That'd be culturally inappropriate. But I thought you treated everybody the same. They'd get whatever nurse was allocated to them. Oh, but now you're thinking about culture. So I think they can see it with other cultures, but they can't always see it with Aboriginal culture.
Well, I think that the no vote really also kicked us in the knees. You know, I think that permissioned people to not take notice, etc., of us. And I'm really glad that the current government is a little bit more interested in social justice. Like I've given up closing the gap. I don't think we'll ever close it, but I think we can fill it. And that's the difference. And one of the good things to fill the gap with is really well educated and empathic health professionals.
Yeah. Are you seeing more Aboriginal people actually going into courses like medicine and nursing and health sciences?
Yeah, each university has to agree to a certain percentage. So where I am at Western Sydney, the dean who started this program, Anne-Marie Hennessy, who's gone over to Sydney now, she said if we want to achieve parity, you need to have a minimum of 3%. But given that we're already so far behind, she said our parity rates need to be 6%. So we have a really good at both universities have a really good percentage of Indigenous people, and we make sure that we stay there. But there are lots of issues around all that. So even in nursing, my son's a lecturer in nursing here. He said he has a lot of Aboriginal students, but there's not that understanding that they are anyway not privileged, but in any way even considered in terms of what they might need for extra support. And it's fair to say that you need extra support. It's fair to say you've got a lot of sorry business. It's fair to say that you're going to be hucky for money, you know, as soon as anybody finds out you've got some, you know, we do. And if you can't admit that as a university or a profession, then you're going to be really struggling to get any sort of gap closed.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I like how you just said that we may not be able to close the gap, but we can fill some of those gaps. I really like that saying.
Well, you know what I was thinking, like, because if I'm a leftover surgical nurse, you know, and why did I want to be a nurse? They asked me, I said, oh, I just love pus and squeezing pimples, which was just stupid, but I was only 15. But so like, if you've got a wound of any sort, then you're not going to just be able to suture that wound shut without expecting there to be at the great risk of forming an abscess underneath, because, you know, nature doesn't like a vacuum. And
Yeah.
and you know, and I mean, you can put a drain in there, you can do all these other stopgap things as best you can, but you're never going to get it healed unless you're using first and second intention healing. We all know that because we've been around for ages. And how do you do that? I mean, you're going to leave a bigger scar, but you're going to get it healed eventually if you use some sort of, I don't know, Solugel's the big thing at the moment, to fill that gap and let it close. And I think that's what we need to be considering now, because close the gap in a generation. And I mean, I know that was a World Health thing, and it was from 2008, and it was across the whole world. It's not just about us, and it's not just an Australian thing, but it still needs more, I don't know, a more understanding of what it's like to be, not only to be in the gap, living with the gap, but being able to see both sides of it. Yeah. Sorry.
Do you think community, talking about community members, what's their understanding around health and illness? And do you think it's improving?
I think one of the things that we get all our 50 medical students to do, all of them, is to do some sort of project in community. And I can guarantee you they're all going to say things like, we're going to teach them about their diabetes, as though education is the big thing. And it's not, that's a deficit approach, and it's very, powerful approach. There's nothing to fill that gap in there. So I'm not sure that people do. I think it takes a really mature kind of attitude to be able to even consider anything's around that with community. So that's the first thing. So I don't think community are unaware of their diabetes. I think they might be unaware of how they can afford to pay for all that, because it is expensive, Like, how can you say to them, oh, you need to be drinking 2 litres of water a day, when their water in Walgett is unpotable? And so you want them to go and buy water, and so I'm not sure that there's this huge educational or knowledge deficit in our communities, but I do think there are issues around food security and poverty and access and equity that really do inform the health status of Aboriginal people.
Yeah. What do you think is the big stereotype that the general population have with Aboriginal people?
Oh, I think they all think that we're violent people, a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I get that sometimes students will say to me, I don't want to go to there. They're very violent people. And you're more likely to get attacked in Blacktown Shopping Centre, just saying. So, I think that there is that. I think there's still the idea that we're not very clever and that we can't do things. That's a big thing. But there's also the stereotype, this entrance to the exotic, that people think that, Aboriginal people are able to have some sort of, I don't know, commune with nature that's going to make them all sing Kumbaya. So,
Yeah.
it's that double-edged sword of the stereotype. It's the one where, you can sing to the animals and call them out of the trees, or you're too stupid and lazy and can't be trusted.
Yeah.
I've got to tell you that even at my age, and even after all that I've done in my life, if something gets missing from the organisation where I work, I am the first one questioned.
Yeah.
The first one. Like, somebody even called me up and said, we are missing the coffee. What's the word for the coffee container and you put your things in? And I don't drink coffee.
Percolator?
Percolator or some form of thing, yeah. And they asked me if I knew where it was. I said, I haven't got it. I didn't take it. I don't drink coffee. And if I did, I wouldn't be stealing it. Stinking.
Yeah.
But it's always the way. I must look like a thief.
Yeah. I don't know if those stereotypes, they were there when I was a kid as well. And I guess some of the kids I work with are still facing that today. So it is still a stereotype that constantly exists in our society.
It really does. And, it's the usual, do you get followed around when you enter a store? Yeah, you do. Even when you're fair, because they know you're Aboriginal, you'll still get followed. you know. So I know when we lived, can I say places? When we lived in Geraldton, my husband, I would come home and my husband would say, "We can't go to that store anymore," and I'd go, "Oh, okay." Then, "Okay, we can't go to that shopping there anymore." I go, "Oh, okay. Listen, we're not buying anything for." I go, "Oh, okay." And I figured that he'd gone in there and somebody, because he was Maori and very, obviously Maori, and they would be horrible to him. Like, and I saw it with my own eyes. Like, they wanted to give him change once from one of the major shopping stores, and he held his hand out, and the girl dropped the money into his hand because she didn't want to touch his little Maori hand. Whereas, normally they just give you the change in your hand.
Yeah.
And so we had to leave Geraldton or we were going to starve to death.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
You'll be seeing a lot of young people come to the university that identify as being Aboriginal but don't know much about culture.
mm.
Where would you suggest they start looking or searching for themselves and also about Aboriginal culture?
A lot of people think that if you can't supply a confirmation of Aboriginality, that you're not really Aboriginal, but I call those our lost children. So, and I can find where you come from, and people, and I tell those young people somewhere know who you are, and they would be crying for you. And that's a function of the 1950s, where you had to get an exemption certificate to be able to work. And I know that if your kids are hungry, you will do anything. You will sign anything. You will do it. You will go anywhere to be able to feed your kids. So it's the grandchildren of those, or even the children of that generation. I welcome them and bring them in. So how do they start to find out who they are? I help them. Like, I'm really good at family history, and I can find where you come from and where your family's been to. And I would also tell them, do all the Aboriginal studies you can at university. Like, no one's going to know everything about your culture, any culture. So take advantage of everything that you can get your hands on while you're there. I know that some get that, what is it, that imposter syndrome a lot of them will have. And I
Yeah.
don't even be feeling that. Like, yeah, the earth that you walk on is your mother, and she knows your footprints. Like, you are welcome here.
Yeah. Now, allyship's another big word that gets thrown around. What makes a good ally?
Someone
A real good ally.
someone who recognizes that they're not the boss of you. And I know that some people mistake allyship for messiahship, and they want to just save you and all your mob, and they cause more trouble than anything else. But how do you be a good ally? Is you just continue with that cultural humility. You recognise that there are going to be some things that you know and you don't know, and you're going to know really not your place, but you're going to know how to be in a position of support rather than a position of ownership. It's like, I hate it, and I'm just saying I hate it, no judgment, but I hate it when people say our Aboriginal community. Oh, we're going to go and talk to our Aboriginal community, and I go, we've come, yeah, we've come lately to sit it, but I don't care if you call it, this is my Aunty Kerrie, because that's different. That's different. So I think it's a tricky place for people to walk in. I don't want to discourage people, because people walking on eggshells is worse for anything. But it does take courage to be able to work with us and walk with us. But there's some great examples around, of people who can do that.
Do you think that sometimes people just become too scared that they're going to offend, so thus I do nothing?
Yeah, I think so. And that's why I say it needs courage, and you need to know, don't walk on eggshells. Don't go blundering in, but sit back, listen, like Maoris go, whakarongo titiro kōrero, listen, look, and then speak. And I really like that idea as well. And it suits us, a lot of our mobs as well. Mm.
I like that. I like the look and listen. And I also like the part where sometimes I've said to be a good ally is we don't need to hear your voice sometimes either. So I might stop at the look and listen, but do we need your voice right now? Or
mm,
what do we need from you right this minute?
mm, Yeah, that's an excellent point. Excellent point. The other thing that I've noticed a lot lately is that I think if you're going to support people in private, I think you need to be able to do that publicly as well. And I think people don't, because they don't want the rest of the world to know that they're supporting Indigenous people. And that to me has no courage, and it doesn't have any integrity in a relationship. And because it's trust, isn't it? Trust that builds a relationship. And if you can't trust them,
Yeah. Yeah.
mm,
So you got some specialty areas that you work in, and one of them is eating disorders.
mm.
What made you fall into eating disorders as a specialty?
Um, I think it was because of that young person that we were talking about who had 14 young people who he was trying to find some sort of program to assist with. I think that was the first thing. And I think we grow up with eating disorders and we don't recognise that we have them, see them, or live with them. And it was really only having the conversations with some of the other people in eating disorders that I really thought, it's not just me who thinks this. It's like there's a whole bigger community around us all who's really interested and will be able to, I don't know, add intelligence around it all. Like Philippa Hay, like Hillary,
Yeah.
those people are very those people.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's why I think. And sometimes I think also like the position that I have has a particular voice, and so to be able to add that voice gives legitimacy to some of the other voices that people might not have yet acquired, like some of our younger people who are talking about this who don't have professor before their name. Like, you only get to be a professor if you hang around long enough. Be honest, that's it. It doesn't require any special skill at all.
No.
Mm,
Yeah. So we've got young people, young Aboriginal people interested in research.
mm.
What particular areas of Aboriginal health do we really need Aboriginal research in?
Anything with mental health and anything with young people's health. I think that we still have such high mortality rates, but I'm just saying, we had in the last 16 months, 12 young men fully 12 young men in our community suicide.
Yeah.
So, you think that's disgusting. Anything else, you would be helicoptering mental health professionals in, you would be doing anything, but they just, oh, well, can't be helped. Drugs and alcohol, and it's not drugs and alcohol. It's despair and racism and just the stress of living in the city. I suppose it's got to be more than just almost a life choice for some of our young people now.
Yeah. I don't think people realize until you know the stats, like like we do, that you know we make up 10% of all suicides in any one year. So
Mm,
we're talking about nearly 350 to 370 something Aboriginal people that die every year by suicide.
mm,
That's huge, considering we only make up 3% of the population.
mm. It is. It's an emergency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if I could give you $1 zillion and a magic wand and say to you, you could spend um, all that money on fixing something in Aboriginal issues. Now, I've only got the wand, okay? I don't actually have the $1 zillion, but just in case I did have the $1 zillion and I
Mhm.
gave it to you, where would you start? What would you do?
I think first of all, I would look at what communities are asking for around the place, and I would look to people like Uncle Cole Wadigo. So I don't know if you've ever met him, but I'm happy to introduce him because he would be a perfect person for you. But he runs a program where he goes and talks to young people. He does the Aboriginal mental health first aid, but he does it on country. And look, must be getting old. TRYP. So he runs a program called called Trip, and he takes young people out on, we've sent a whole lot of people around. He's a consultancy. That's what it is. The story of Trip, and he's just a wonderful, marvelous person. And he's so good, teach, mentor, and challenge, and all of these sorts of things. And I'm going to put this in the chat box for you, so
Yeah, cool.
you can share that with everybody.
I'll share that with everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's to reach your potential. No. Excellence doesn't happen by accident. It takes preparation, teamwork, consistency, and dedication. So that's Uncle Cole.
Yeah, I'll put his details up on the page as well.
So people like that, I think, who he goes out into our communities, he goes right around Australia, and he can come back and he can tell you what's going on with our young people, especially our young boys. So I think you need to be looking at those sorts of issues. So that's one. I would be looking at good personnel. Two is housing,
Yeah.
and affordable housing and decent housing, and not just like rural and remote, but like for people living in the city areas, where they can't who can afford a house around here now? No one can.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big issue. Domestic violence is a big issue. I don't like to talk about it because I know that it fits stereotypes of some people, but if you've watched this is we were just little boys.
Yeah. So pop that link in, I'll get people to watch it too.
From Kinchela. So, that's heartbreaking. But they explain it a lot. My dad was also taken away, but he became more of an introvert rather than any of the issues that some people might want to think about domestic violence. He was never violent. So there are those sorts of issues, I think, but each community is going to be different. Each community is going to have different needs. Like, I would really love to send a really good dental service right out into the middle of Australia. I would love to be able to send hearing services. They say, oh, you can get your hearing tested, but then what? What? Thank you, I'm deaf, thank you. So I would love to be able to fund proper hearing services. I would really love to be able to send ophthalmologists around, like really properly, really send them around, so that then you're not waiting so long, and because why do we present later and sicker? Because we just don't have access to the resources. That sort of thing. Like, that's what I would love to do.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I'm just watching the time, and I've got another final couple of questions for you, and that is, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
Well, I don't think that I'll retire, but I think I'll move further out into the country. Because I'm Aunty Kerrie and I grow people. Like, I don't like to leave a position until I've got someone who I know can replace me in that position. Not that I'm great, but you don't want to leave positions unfilled. And that's my plan. Like, I really hope to be able to grow people. I don't seek awards. I never put myself up for anything, because then you've got to go and act very sensible, and I'm not going to be doing that. So but I do like to grow people, and I think I'll just continue what I'm doing, but maybe in a more rural setting. It's really noisy around here in the city, or Blacktown. It's probably not the city for most people, but it is for country person like me.
Now, I grew up in Bankstown. That's right. That's where I initially grew up and went to school at Wiley Park, Lakemba.
Oh no.
Or moving to Street. So I know that area. And then when I did nursing, it was in Canterbury. So that's the area that I know really well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And my final question is, what would you like people to walk away with from our yarn this afternoon?
I would like people to be really interested in learning more about Indigenous culture. I would like young people who are learning about their own culture to be able to feel safe and acknowledged. And I guess, a little bit kumbaya. I would like people to really look at the causes of Indigenous disadvantage and some government somewhere to have the courage to be able to say, let's really fill that gap.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. Look, you know how much I love the work that you do, and I'm always following you. So I want to say thank you very much for hanging out with me today. Guys, I'll see you at the next podcast, and thank you, Aunty Kerrie, for joining us.
Oh, thank you very, very much, and good luck to you and your listeners. God bless.